Hey, it's Tom, and today I want to talk about a report published by Hired. It's called State of Software Engineers 2021. So we'll go through this report and I will talk about my thoughts while browsing the data. And at the beginning, I would like to explain why I published this kind of video so late. Because this report was published like 2 or 3 months ago, but I wanted to go deeply into the results, and I also talked with my friends, so it should be less biased by my opinions, but I tried to discuss it with my friends and ask about their opinions. So I think uh, the analysis should be a little bit better. Okay, let's start. So at the beginning, we have a couple important paragraphs. The first one is about the average salaries that was growing as in any other year, but recent year, at least I noticed, and my friends in Europe at least noticed the significant growth of salaries, and this was caused mostly because of more and more remote jobs and because of savings that companies are able to make while working remotely. They save electricity, food, costs of office, and so on. By the way, Google saved around $1 billion last year because of remote work. The second paragraph is talking about the growing demand for front-end engineers and back-end engineers and full-stack engineers, of course. This is also something that I noticed. And honestly, I believe that at least in case of the front-end engineers, it's caused by the fact of the popularity of multi-platform solutions. So the demand for mobile developers is decreasing, in my opinion, at least in what I see in LinkedIn and in job offers. And more and more companies are trying to play with React Native. This is why also I started playing with that and learning front-end as my second skill set. Backend and full stack, that's pretty obvious. Any app, any service need some backend and logic, but behind the backend word, there are also a lot of people working with serverless architectures like AWS Lambda, Firebase, Google Cloud Platform functions, and so on, even Cloudflare functions. There's also Azure. Machine learning engineers, like in recent 3 years or 4 years, those jobs are really well paid. However, it's really tough to be a machine learning engineer. There is much more data cleaning and fine-tuning parameters of the, for example, neural network than the real development. That's why, for example, I switched back to the traditional development, because in machine learning, you have to be more like math or statistic focused than engineering focused. It's really tough, and you have to be really enjoying that to stay focused and stay enjoying this kind of work. This one is pretty clear. The one thing that I noticed recent year is the significant growth of job offers and job postings with demand for GCP, for Google Cloud. For last 3 years, most of serverless or cloud architectures were demanding AWS skills, and in 2020 I noticed that a significant growth of Google Cloud Platform usage, and in 2021 also I see more and more jobs posting like front-end jobs with the demand for GCP or Firebase skills. Go and Scala, two languages which are really popular and will for sure see a significant growth of their popularity also in Stack Overflow survey. later this year. I also love this Stack Overflow surveys. Yeah, the AWS saw the 8x growth of demand compared to Google Cloud. But as I mentioned, what I see is Google Cloud is growing from zero to like the sometimes appearing skill that is in job postings. This one is really important. Engineers in smaller markets are more likely to get remote job offers. If you are living like me in a smaller country, I'm living in Poland, and what I was also talking with my friends in Ukraine, in Estonia, even in Germany, we are all getting a lot more remote job offers, not only from Europe but also from US. And in the past, when you wanted to find a remote job in US, that's obvious. If you are living in Europe, especially in Central or Eastern Europe, a job in US is great, because if you will get 100K per year, then it's unavailable in the local markets usually. And right now, you don't have to look for remote job offers, because there are more and more job offers coming to you, and a lot more of them are remote. They are not demanding you to move to London, to move to Switzerland, to move to Berlin, or just move entirely to US, which might be hard because you have to leave your family here. This is actually why I never moved to US. And yeah, this one, we are more productive while working remotely. Not everyone, because some people have kids, and they sometimes had to spend time with those kids because they were unable to go to the kindergarten or to the school, and you have to play with them. So it might be harder, but for a lot of people, you don't spend your time on talking while drinking coffee. You don't spend time while talking during eating the lunch. So I believe that this is possible, and I also noticed that I spent less time chatting than I was spending in the past. About motivations to learn, I think that doesn't really change during the years. The best developers are those who are learning because they are enjoying what they are doing, and they are just curious what's able to be done and what can be improved. And the reasons for working as a software developer, I won't discuss that, because that's more a topic for I don't know, psychologist maybe. Not for an engineer like me, because I'm not good at reading humans' brain and what other people have in mind, like a lot of software developers. And engineers, more and more developers are self-taught. Yeah, this is something that is noticeable, and I noticed that during last years that more and more people just abandon their high school or college in US, and just learning on their own on boot camps, or using the YouTube channels or any other available sources. And yeah, they are sometimes great developers. And to be honest, I rarely use anything that I was learned during my high school or while studies. Okay, let's go to the next page. It won't be that long. This page was really long in the content. The second page is the info from the Josh, the CEO of Hired. That's not really important for us in this case. The overview, that's not also very important. Macro trends. Yeah, so we mostly discussed that already. More remote jobs, the salaries are growing, especially in those countries which are not so rich. So, for example, yeah, let me give you a quick example. So average senior software developer salary in Poland, it's like $60,000. It's, yeah, something around that. That's the average salary. And if you will get a remote job, you can easily get like $90,000 in Europe. And if you'll get a remote job in US, you can easily pass 100K per year, which is a significant growth. And please still keep in mind that even in countries like Poland, the software developer's salary is way above the average. Not maybe like in Germany where it's more flat, but in countries like in Central and Eastern Europe, software engineers and software developers are making really good money. And so if they are able to get even more while working remotely, then it's easy to find out that it will be great opportunity to, for example, buy a flat quickly or build a house. Okay, the hottest jobs in software engineering. Okay, this is something that is probably a little bit weird, but from what I noticed, there are way more front-end jobs. However, at least in this report and in this chart, we see that there was a slight decrease in 2020. In case of mobile, it's steady. However, yeah, I constantly see more and more iOS developer jobs with demand for example, React Native or some Flutter knowledge. That's it. The key takeaways, same as last year, we also were talking about that. Backend, full stack, and frontend are really safe bets for probably next years. And the mobile engineers still, even the amount of jobs is decreasing, the salary is still pretty high. Of course, it's way higher in US than in Europe, but it's still worth to be a native iOS developer because there are a lot of jobs. It's just harder to find a job because there are less startups starting with iOS apps. Like in the past, like 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of startups, for example, if you would search through the Y Combinator jobs, 3 or 4 years ago, most of them were mobile first. So they were starting with iOS app or Android app, and then they were building some front end and back end. Right now, most of those startups are starting with front end, with web app, and then they are probably trying to play with React Native, porting part of the logic from the React to the React Native, and then boom, you have a mobile app without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for developers. But still, there are a lot of companies that have to build native apps, and they are paying pretty well, so it's still worth to be an iOS developer. Okay. Salaries increased. Yeah, I also explained that the salaries increase was mostly caused, at least in my opinion, by the fact that there are way more remote jobs, and companies from expensive cities, like from Bay Area, or in general from US or Switzerland or Austria. Yeah. They just offering way more than the local market companies, and because of that, a lot of people switched to full remote jobs. And also, a lot of companies offered full remote jobs for everyone around the world, like Stripe, like Spotify. Yeah, there were a couple big also that were offering that, but probably the Spotify and Stripe are the most well known from the last year, from this big change. AR VR technologies. I'm not really into the VR or AR, so I won't discuss that. Machine learning, as I mentioned, it's a great job if you are good at math and you are able to focus for a long hours on fine-tuning parameters to just get more efficient algorithm and more efficient network to be better than your competitors. But if you're a typical engineer, I would really consider trying to switch to machine learning. I spent like a lot of time learning machine learning, and it's a great knowledge. However, I'm not a big fan of spending like rest of my life in PyTorch or in TensorFlow or in any other framework. From time to time, it's great, but not everyone loves that. Salaries. This is something that I think might be hard actually to judge, because those growths are like in a first chapter was mentioned between 5 and 10%. It mostly depends on your location. If you are able to find a remote job, then your salary may grow way more than like 3% in case of mobile developers, and way more than 13% in case of AR. If you are living in a city which is already a tech hub, and you're only looking for a local jobs, then maybe this kind of information might be valuable for you. But yeah, I would highly consider going remote. Those are also salaries increase in Toronto and London. And as you see, for example, in London, though, those growths are way higher than in US cities, like in Bay Area, which is already a pretty expensive place. We have something around like 3% by average, 4%. And like here in London, there's 11,999,354. I think it's looks like a 7% by average, like way more. Yeah, it's really interesting. By the way, London becomes a really good tech hub for European people. Even though the Great Britain left the European Union, the salaries are growing really fast, and there are still a lot of companies that are looking for remote developers in European time zone. Okay, the hottest coding skills. That's interesting, at least for me. Python, JavaScript, and Java are favorite coding languages. Java, really? I believe that when we will see the Stack Overflow survey, the result will be absolutely opposite. Java is always hated in Stack Overflow surveys. Python and JavaScript are loved more or less, but it's like more neutral. But the second thing is really important. Our Kotlin and TypeScript are ranked at the least favorite languages for software engineers. And this is really interesting, because I also checked the last year Stack Overflow survey, and Kotlin was one of the most loved languages. R was also not so very hated. It wasn't probably the favorite. Scala or Go was the favorite, or Rust, but R wasn't really hated. But TypeScript is loved around in front-end community. You can save a lot of time. TypeScript is maybe not great for proof of concept or MVP, but still it's a great addition to the JavaScript. Like for people coming from typed languages like me, coming from Swift or Objective-C, TypeScript is great. It's really time saver, even though you have to write all those interfaces, but it's way easier to control your code. Okay, just don't go through this. As for me, this result is really weird. A lot of people love Kotlin, a lot of people love TypeScript. I'm not quite sure why it's listed as the least favorite languages. The highest in-demand skills for software engineers are Redux.js, that's for front-end developers. Google Cloud, as I mentioned, I also noticed that there is a significant growth. AWS, like for last few years. React, traditionally for front-end, also for last 3 or 4 years. It's just it's maybe not constantly growing, but it's really steady, and this is something new in front-end community, because I was tracking front-end community for a long time. I just wasn't learning that heavily as right now, and there was constant switch from lot of other frameworks in the past, like Ember, Angular. There was some peak with Vue, which is not so popular right now, and the React is like it's flat. People probably love React. That's the one thing, and the second thing is probably a lot of services were written in React, and they have to be maintained. The most loved languages are Go and Scala. It was probably mentioned before. I like Go. Scala, it's too close to Java, at least for me. I'm not hating Java. I also started with Java, but right now it's not. I wouldn't like to work in Java like for full time, but that's only me. This is something interesting. Most in-demand coding skills. So the key information here is that this is the growth. So if the base was low, like in case of Google Cloud, the growth by 2.7 times, it's not meaning that it's better than AWS, which is growing in the same pace, because the demand for AWS was way higher in the past. So Google Cloud is still not so popular, and at least looking at this chart, it doesn't look like it should become very popular soon, because AWS has way higher base and is growing in the same pace. React popularity, that's really important, because React was already popular, and this demand is only growing. As you see, there is no Swift, which is a little bit sad, to be honest. The TypeScript, I also think that it should be a little bit higher, because TypeScript has its momentum, I believe, and at least it has last year, and this year I also see a lot of offers, job offers with the TypeScript, and it seems like it's very popular. And there are Express.js for Node developers, Redux.js for React developers. This is probably very connected, Redux and React. CI, that's common for all developers, mobile developers, backend, frontend. The growth of automation is also noticeable in recent years. Ruby on Rails, yeah, I'm surprised. Honestly, I don't know what's the base for Ruby, but it's still alive. It's still growing, so it's good for them. Okay, let's go further. And yeah, this is also something that I noticed, that there's more demand for mid-level engineers. So for example, in my case, I have right now like 10 years of experience, and I think that companies stopped looking for very experienced developers with like many years of experience, maybe because of the costs, because usually people with longer experience demand more money. That's probably obvious. And people with like 5 years of experience are already usually great developers, and of course, if they were working in interesting projects and with good people that were able to train them and help them to grow, or they are very, very talented. So, but still, after like 3, 4, 5 years, you are able to be a great developer with big experience. So maybe it's not worth to pay like 30% more for people with 15 years of experience, because experience in your last technology is probably also like 3 or 4 or 5 years, because the technologies are changing. So if someone started with React 5 years ago, and even if you have 20 years of experience, you might not be really way better than a guy that started programming 5 years ago and started with React, and he's spending his whole time with React. And you both have 5 years of experience with React, so you're equal. And yeah, and the second guy is younger, maybe is thinking a little bit faster. I don't know. I'm just trying to explain why this might be a reason why companies are not looking for a very experienced developers. Yeah, as you see, the growth for 10 for developers with a long time experience is not growing as fast as for mid and typical senior developers, because with 6 to 10 years developers, you are easily a senior developer, and with 10 plus years you are probably some kind of team lead or tech lead or software engineer or a software manager. Sorry, engineering manager. Yeah, I'm reading that for a too long time, and maybe that's the cause why companies are not looking for this kind of people. And remote work, yeah, this is something really important. It's not only in US, but also in Europe. I think in Europe it's right now even more changing that than in US, which already was a big country and there were a lot of people just working remotely. And software developers are more productive, and candidates in smaller job markets, yeah, so 2 to 5% is really low. A lot of people that some people that I know that changed their jobs in recent months, working like locally in Poland and right now working remotely in Europe, their change was like 30%, and some of them even more, like close to 50%, so which is like really significant. Still working in Europe, but remotely. Okay, let's go further. Yeah, so as you see, remote salaries are not growing in areas that were already very expensive, and they were demanding local developers to work there. If you were living in San Francisco or San Diego, or in Bay Area, and you want to work remotely, that might be not the best idea, because all those big offices are already in your area, so it's just not worth to pay you more for remote work. But if your base was low and you were living in Chicago or in country in Europe, for sure you can find a remote job and the growth of the salary will be significant, way over those couple percents. Yeah, and the key takeaway from this page is that software developers want to work remotely because they can make more money, they have more flexible working hours, and if you will build your home office in a good way, then it will be usually way better than your traditional office. Passion for coding, yeah, this is something that's really not new. If you want to be a good developer, you have to like it. You cannot go to software development because it's opportunity to make a ton of money, because you won't make this money. It's like in any other area. if you are a good developer and you're not really thinking about making a ton of money, but you just started programming in the past because you liked that, it was interesting for you, and you're doing that in your free time because you love that, then someone will pay you a lot of money because you're good at what you're doing. And if you will only go for a boot camp and then will spend only time in your job as a programmer, then you won't become a top developer because you might not love that, and you have to love that to be a good developer, at least way better than the average. So yeah, if you have passion for coding, just do that, and everything else will come. Uh, by the way, with software engineer salaries, it's really not that important to get those like 5 or 10% more. It's more important to do what you like to do, to work on projects that are really important for you, because anyway you will make a lot of money in US, in London, in Germany, in Poland, in Estonia, in Ukraine, in Russia, in China, in India, anywhere. Uh, that's the uh, key takeaway. Yeah, and those charts are information about what kind of problems would developer love to solve. Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's more for a psychologist than for a software developer to comment that. But this part is really important, the interview process. So the 80% of respondents say that most coding exams and exercises are irrelevant to the day-to-day job of an engineer. And I fully agree. All those lead code tests are ridiculous. Like, I even understand the system design part of the interview, which might make sense because it shows how you start thinking, how you're trying to solve the problems, and so on. But solving problems of, I don't know, algorithmic splitting a tree, or reversing linked list, really it's not very useful at day-to-day job. And I think, yeah, it is really stressful because you're trying to find out the complexity of your solution. Try to not use brute force because that's stupid. Everyone can do that, and no one wants you to do this. So yeah. I'm not quite sure if a stressed developer who is trying to get a job and has to find out a solution for a problem that was solved by millions of people already, and has to explain the time complexity, space complexity, simultaneously while writing this solution code. That might be stressful, and it's not very helpful. I believe I never do that when I'm interviewing candidates for a company I'm working for, and I believe like system design is way better method to understand how a person is thinking, how good is at solving problems, and is way less stressful because you're just chatting. Okay, I'm trying to solve this problem. I think that we may need a service for that, a microservice for that. Why? Because of that. Okay, do you see any bottlenecks? No, I don't see. Okay, I think so. I think there might be some, and so on and so on. And you'll see that those problems are being solved, especially for junior developers. Will you allow a junior developer in your company to write an algorithm that's checking some, I don't know, lots of data, and will you ask him to measure the performance and optimize that? No, it won't happen in real life. So don't stress those young people with those whiteboarding problems taken from lead code. That's my personal opinion, at least. Yeah, and 70% people thinks that this is the most stressful part of the interview, which I absolutely agree. Okay, that's probably it. Methodology and about hired. Oh, okay. We went through the report. You can download this report for free from hired website, or you can just put a state of software engineers in Google and you will see the link. I will also put the link in the description of this video. I hope you enjoyed going through this report with me and to spend your time in a funny way. Maybe not funny, but at least helpful and not boring. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye!